The black void of space stretched endlessly before Elias Cade's eyes. His ship, the Endurance, drifted silently through it, its engines humming like a heartbeat in the stillness. The stars above were pinpricks of light, cold and distant, but they offered little comfort. The universe had always been a place of mystery and danger, and Elias had learned that danger often came when least expected. It had been a routine salvage mission, nothing more than another wreck to pick apart, another payday to earn. At least that's what Elias had thought when they received the distress signal. Another ghost ship, his first officer, Nadia, had said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Probably nothing left but rust and memories. But Elias had a gut feeling. Something about the signal had drawn him in. It was faint, broken, but it had been there just enough to pull his ship off its course. Now, hours later, Elias stood at the controls, watching the debris field ahead. Shattered pieces of a once mighty vessel floated aimlessly in the black, pieces of metal and torn hulls glinting in the dim light of distant stars. The shuttle had been torn apart, no question about it. "Scan for life signs," Elias said, his voice steady, though his mind raced. The wreck was unlike anything they had encountered before. Alien, far more advanced than anything humanity had built. The technology was strange, sleek, and unfamiliar. The silence on the bridge stretched as the scanner hummed, then flickered to life. Nadia's eyes widened. "There's someone alive," she said, her voice cracking. "Life signs, faint but stable." "Just one, Captain. It's barely registering." Elias frowned, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. One person, alone, alive in the wreckage of an alien ship? That didn't sit right with him. "Prepare for a boarding party." "We're going in," the airlock hissed as the outer door opened, revealing the wreckage of the alien shuttle. Elias and his crew stepped out into the darkened hull, their boots making soft thuds on the cold floor. The place was a mess. Debris scattered everywhere, wires hanging from the ceiling, the faint smell of burnt metal lingering in the air. The ship was in bad shape, but the signs of recent life were clear. A trail of blood, scorched and torn clothing, and the unmistakable sense of someone having been here. "Fighting to survive. Stay sharp," Elias murmured, drawing his blaster. Nadia followed his lead, her hand tightening around her weapon. They moved cautiously through the wreck, checking every corner, every darkened passage. It was strange, too strange. No sign of the crew, no bodies, just emptiness. Then at the far end of the hall, Elias saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A figure slumped against the wall, barely conscious, her breathing shallow. Blood pooled around her, her armor damaged but still intact. Her face was obscured by a sleek, dark mask, but even so Elias could see the shape of her body. Alien, graceful, and yet human in some ways. Her limbs were long and toned, her posture rigid despite the clear pain she was in. She looked like a warrior, but something about her, something in the way her eyes flickered open when she heard them, told Elias this wasn't just any alien. This was someone important. "Stay back," Elias said, holding up his hand. He crouched slowly, not wanting to spook her, not wanting to make a move she might see as a threat. "We're here to help." Her eyes, slanted, dark and fierce, stared up at him, studying him with a look of cold calculation. There was a flicker of recognition, then nothing. "I need help," the woman whispered, her voice strained, the words barely audible. She reached for something at her side, her weapon perhaps, or a tool, but the effort caused her to wince in pain. Her hand fell limply to the floor. Elias hesitated. He'd seen plenty of alien races during his time in space, but nothing like this. Her species was unknown to him. Her technology alien and far beyond anything humanity had developed. And yet there she was, alive and in desperate need of aid. "Can you walk?" Elias asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're taking you back to our ship. You'll be safe there." The woman's lips curled in something like a grimace, a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I can't go. They'll find me." "They?" Elias asked, his curiosity growing. "Who are they?" But the woman didn't answer. Her head lolled back, and for a moment Elias thought she had passed out. He cursed under his breath. "We need to get her out of here now," Nadia said, her voice tense. Elias glanced around, then nodded. He knew the risks. They didn't have much time before whoever was chasing this woman found them. His ship was the closest one to the wreck. It was their only chance. Lifting the woman as gently as he could, Elias carried her through the wreckage, his mind racing. The ship had been destroyed, but why? Who had done this? And why was this woman so important that someone would go to such lengths to kill her? The airlock hissed once again as they made it back to the Endurance. Elias stepped into the medical bay, laying the woman on one of the tables. Nadia immediately started preparing the equipment. Elias watched, his mind still spinning. Who is she? Nadia asked, her voice hushed as she worked. I don't know, Elias replied, staring down at the woman. Her mask remained firmly in place. But she's not from around here. I can tell that much. A soft groan escaped the woman's lips, and Elias leaned closer. Her eyes fluttered open, and she stared at him for a long moment, the mask obscuring most of her features. But there was a recognition there, something familiar in her gaze. You, she whispered, her voice still weak. You saved me, Elias nodded. I did, and I'm not going to leave you behind. We're going to get you to safety. For a moment there was silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the woman spoke again. Remove my mask, she said, and you'll finally learn who I really am. Elias froze, uncertainty creeping into his mind. What could she mean by that? Who was she really? And why had she asked him to remove her mask now, when she could barely hold herself together? But before he could respond, the woman's eyes closed again and she slipped back into unconsciousness. Elias stared down at her, the weight of her words heavy in his mind. Who was this woman, really? And what danger had he just invited aboard his ship? The questions lingered in the air like a shadow, and Elias knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a salvage captain. He was now part of something far bigger than he could have imagined. The game had changed. The medical bay of the Endurance was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitors. Elias stood at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed, watching the strange woman rest. Her mask still covered her face, hiding her features, and her chest rose and fell in slow, uneven breaths. She looked fragile, broken even, but there was something powerful about her, something that told him she was no ordinary survivor. Nadia leaned against the wall nearby, her eyes fixed on the alien with a frown. We should have left her, she muttered. We don't even know what she is. What if she's dangerous? Elias shook his head. She's alive. That's enough for me. I wasn't going to leave her to die out there. You say that now, Nadia said, her voice sharp. But what happens when her people come looking? Or worse, whoever destroyed her ship. You saw that wreck, Captain. Someone wanted her gone. And now we've brought their problem onto our ship. Elias glanced at her, his jaw tight. He understood her fears, but something inside him refused to let go. We'll deal with it when it comes. Until then, we keep her alive. That's the job now. Nadia gave him a hard look but said nothing more. She turned and left the room, leaving Elias alone with the masked woman. He stepped closer, studying her armor. The design was unlike anything he had ever seen. Sleek silver-black plates covered her body, marked with strange patterns that seemed to glow faintly under the light. The mask itself was smooth, featureless except for narrow slits where her eyes glowed faintly. It gave her an air of mystery, of something hidden just beneath the surface. As Elias watched, her hand twitched slightly and her head turned toward him. She was awake. She whispered, her voice weak but steady. Why, did you save me? Elias hesitated, then pulled up a chair beside her bed. Because leaving you behind would have made me no better than the people who tried to kill you. And I don't do that. Not if I can help it. Her eyes narrowed behind the mask. Humans, strange creatures, always unpredictable. Elias allowed a small smile. That's one way to put it. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body and she winced. Elias reached out quickly, steadying her. Easy. You're not ready to move yet. Her breathing steadied and she leaned back against the bed. Silence lingered between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Elias asked the one that had been burning in his mind since the wreck. Who are you? For a moment, she said nothing. Then her voice softened. It doesn't matter, not yet. What matters is this: I cannot stay here. If I remain on your ship, they will find you, and they will kill all of you. Elias frowned. Who's they? Again, silence. She turned her head away, refusing to answer. Elias sighed, frustrated. He wanted answers, but he could see she wasn't ready to give them. Fine, don't tell me. But whether you like it or not, you're on this ship now. And until you're strong enough to leave, you're my responsibility. Her eyes flickered as if surprised by his words. For a moment, she seemed to study him, weighing his sincerity. Finally, she gave the smallest nod. The days that followed were tense. The alien woman remained in the medbay, slowly recovering while the crew whispered behind closed doors. Fear spread among them like wildfire. She was different, unknown, and unknown meant danger. One night, Elias walked into the mess hall to find several crew members gathered, their voices hushed but urgent. "We can't just keep her here," one man said. "She's going to bring trouble down on us. You saw the scans. Her ship wasn't just destroyed. It was hunted." "Exactly," another agreed. "We should drop her at the nearest station and be done with it. Let someone else deal with her." When they noticed Elias, silence fell. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, waiting for his judgment. He looked around at them, his expression hard. "I hear your concerns, but she stays. Until she's strong enough to stand on her own, we're not leaving her behind." Murmurs rose, angry and frustrated, but none dared to challenge him outright. Elias turned and left the room, but the unease in the air was thick. 2 days later, the first signs of trouble appeared. Nadia burst onto the bridge, her face pale. Captain Long-Range Sensors picked up something. "Multiple ships. They're sweeping the area and they're heading our way." Elias's blood ran cold. "How many?" "3 destroyers. And they're not human. Their tech matches the wreck we found." Elias clenched his fists. So it was true. Whoever the alien woman was, she had enemies and they were closing in. He moved quickly, giving orders to the crew. "Keep us hidden as long as you can. Power down non-essential systems. Make us look like another piece of junk floating in the void." The crew scrambled to obey, their fear growing. Elias could see it in their eyes. They were terrified, and for good reason. Those ships out there weren't just passing through. They were hunting. Elias made his way to the med bay. The alien woman was sitting upright now, her strength slowly returning. She turned her masked face toward him as he entered. "They're here, aren't they?" she said softly. Elias didn't bother denying it. 3 ships. They're sweeping the sector. They'll find us eventually." She was silent for a moment, then she said, "You should have left me. This is my war, not yours." Elias shook his head. "Too late for that now. You're on my ship, and that makes this our fight." Her hand clenched weakly at her side. "You don't understand. If they capture me, they will not stop at me. They will burn your ship, your crew, everything. That is their way." "Then we don't let them capture you," Elias said simply. She turned to look at him, and though he could not see her expression behind the mask, he could feel her eyes on him, searching, questioning. Finally she said, "Humans. Always defiant. Always ready to fight against impossible odds." "Why?" Elias gave a faint smile. "Because someone has to." Hours passed. The enemy ships drew closer, their scanning beams slicing through the dark void. The crew of the Endurance waited in silence, every second stretching into eternity. Then the alarm blared. "They've locked onto us," Nadia shouted. "They know we're here." The ship shook as enemy fire slammed into the shields. The crew rushed to their stations, panic threatening to overwhelm them. Elias gripped the controls, his voice cutting through the chaos. Evasive maneuvers. "Keep those shields up!" The battle had begun. In the medbay, the alien woman forced herself to her feet. She was still weak, her body trembling, but she could not sit idle while others risked their lives for her. She staggered to the armory, where crew members stared in shock as she took a blade from the wall. It was a human weapon, simple compared to her own, but her grip was steady, her movements practiced. One young crewman tried to stop her. "You shouldn't even be walking." She silenced him with a single look, her masked face turning toward the sound of battle echoing through the ship. "If I stay here, you all die. I will not let that happen." Back on the bridge, Elias fought to keep the ship intact. Explosions rocked the hull, sparks flying from consoles as the shields buckled under the relentless assault. "Captain, we can't hold much longer." Nadia shouted. Elias gritted his teeth. He refused to let this be the end. Not for him, not for his crew, and not for the woman who had fallen into his arms in that wreck. Then, the door to the bridge opened, and the alien woman stepped inside. Her presence was commanding, even in her weakened state. She moved to Elias's side, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "Give me access to your systems. I can help you." Elias glanced at her, uncertain, but in that moment of desperation, he nodded. "Do it." She placed her hand on the console, and suddenly, the alien technology in her armor interfaced with the human systems. Strange symbols and codes filled the screen as she worked. her masked face focused. Moments later, the enemy fleet faltered. Their scanners flickered, their weapons hesitated as if something was interfering with their systems. "They're confused," Nadia cried. "Captain, we have an opening." Elias didn't hesitate. "Punch it. Get us out of here." The engines roared, and the Endurance shot forward, slipping through the gap in the enemy formation. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the hunters behind. Silence filled the bridge. The crew stared at the masked woman, their fear slowly giving way to awe. She had saved them. Elias looked at her, his mind racing with new questions. Who was she really? And what kind of power did she hold that made entire fleets hunt her down? As if sensing his thoughts, she turned to him. "This is only the beginning. They will not stop. Not until I am gone." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure you're not." For the first time, the alien woman bowed her head, a gesture of respect. And though her mask still hid her true face, Elias felt the weight of her trust settling between them. The fight was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The hum of the engines was the only sound on the Endurance as it glided through the darkness of space. The crew was tired. They had barely slept since the encounter with the enemy fleet, and the constant tension weighed heavily on everyone. But Elias could not rest, not yet. He paced the bridge, staring at the stars, thinking about the alien woman resting in the medbay. She had been quiet since the battle, her breathing steady but shallow. The crew respected her, but some still whispered behind their hands. Humans were naturally curious and wary, especially when someone was so different, so unknown. And this woman, she was unlike anything they had ever seen. Elias finally left the bridge and walked toward the medbay. He pushed the sliding door open, and there she was, lying on the bed, eyes closed, mask still covering her face. Yet something had changed. She seemed calmer, her breathing more even. Recovery was coming, slowly but surely. He approached her, careful not to disturb the monitors. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. Her eyes opened slightly, slits glowing faintly behind the mask. "Better," she said, voice quiet. "I can stand now." Elias's jaw tightened. "Good, we're not safe yet. They won't give up." She shifted slightly, attempting to sit up, and winced. Elias was immediately at her side, steadying her. "Easy. Don't push too hard." Her eyes studied him, and for the first time he thought he saw curiosity there, along with a faint spark of trust. "You humans are stubborn," she said softly. "You risk your lives for strangers. Why?" Elias shrugged. "Maybe because sometimes strangers are worth saving. Or maybe because we can't ignore someone in need. Not anymore." She seemed to consider this, then nodded faintly. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that." The peace did not last. Sensors beeped urgently. On the bridge, Nadia was already at her station, her face pale. "Captain, we've picked up multiple contacts. Not far, and they're moving fast. 2 destroyers, heavily armed." "They've located us," Elias clenched his fists. "So much for a quiet trip. Set course for the nearest jump point. Keep shields high, and prepare for evasive maneuvers," Nadia nodded, typing rapidly. "They're closing in fast. We'll need more than luck to get out of this one." Elias turned and headed back to the medbay. The alien woman was already standing, her movements careful but deliberate. Her armor reflected the dim light, and though the mask hid her face, her posture radiated readiness. "They are coming for me," she said simply, "and they will not stop until I am gone." Elias shook his head. "You're not alone. We'll make sure of that." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time Elias sensed hesitation. Fear, perhaps, or memory of past battles. "You do not know what you face," she whispered. "Try me," Elias replied. "We've survived worse." The enemy ships were closing in fast. The Endurance's engines roared as it darted through space, shields flaring with every hit. The alien woman took her place on the bridge beside Elias. She had regained enough strength to assist with navigation and defense, and her knowledge of alien systems proved invaluable. "Captain," she said, voice calm but urgent, "they rely on strict formations and predictable patterns. Use unpredictability. Human thinking is different." "That can save you." Elias's eyes narrowed. "You're saying we fight smarter, not just harder?" She inclined her head. "Exactly." Following her guidance, Elias took the ship on sharp, unexpected maneuvers. The enemy fleet struggled to adapt, their weapons missing as the Endurance twisted and turned like a snake through the void. The crew began to see the alien woman not as a threat, but as an ally. Even Nadia, still cautious, nodded as the ship slipped free from a dangerous attack. Hours passed. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The enemy ships retreated, frustrated and unable to keep up with the human ship's unpredictable tactics. The med bay was quiet again. The alien woman collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion pulling at her body. Elias knelt beside her. "You did well," he said softly. "We all did. But I have a feeling this isn't the end." She looked at him, her eyes narrowing behind the mask. "You must know the truth soon. My mask hides more than my face. It hides my identity, and until you see it, you cannot understand the danger you carry." Elias swallowed hard. "I don't care who you are. You saved lives today. That's enough for me. But I need to know. If we're going to survive together, I need to trust you fully." Her fingers twitched, then she reached for her mask. She paused, a long moment of silence stretching between them. Then she lifted it slowly. Elias froze. Beneath the mask was not just the face of an alien warrior. She was regal, elegant with sharp features and eyes that burned with intelligence and determination. She bore the marks of battle across her skin, scars that told stories of survival, rebellion, and pain. "I am," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "the exiled princess of my empire. I carry knowledge that could destroy fleets, topple tyrants, and ignite rebellions." Elias stared, stunned. His mind raced. The enemy fleets, the pursuit, her desperate need for protection, it all made sense now. This was bigger than he had imagined. "You're royalty?" he asked, still catching his breath. "Yes," she said quietly, "but not in the way your people think of royalty. I was born into power, yes, but my people, my empire, they are corrupt. I fight for change, for those who cannot fight for themselves. And now, I am hunted for it." Elias's hands tightened into fists. "Then we fight for you. You saved us. Now it's our turn." A flicker of relief passed across her face. "Humans, you are unexpected, brave, stubborn. Perhaps this is why I must trust you." The bond between them strengthened in that moment. Elias realized that this was no longer a simple rescue. They were partners now, bound by trust, danger, and necessity. Over the next days, the alien woman shared what she could. Her empire, she explained, was ruled by a tyrant who valued obedience above all else. She had rebelled, stolen critical knowledge, and fled. The fleet that had attacked them was sent to eliminate her and retrieve the information. Elias listened, absorbing every word. He did not fully understand the intricacies of alien politics, but he understood the danger, and he understood that humanity's stubborn courage, the refusal to leave someone behind, the willingness to risk everything, was exactly what made them different. Exactly what could turn the tide. Nadia watched quietly, her skepticism slowly giving way to respect. The crew, too, began to see the alien woman as more than a passenger. She was a strategist, a fighter, and perhaps the key to something much larger than themselves. But even as they prepared, the threat loomed. The enemy fleets would not give up. They would track them, hunt them, and stop at nothing. And the Endurance would have to rely on every ounce of human cunning, every spark of bravery to survive. Elias stood at the edge of the bridge, looking at the stars stretching into infinity. He turned to the alien woman who stood beside him, mask now set aside. "Whatever comes next," he said, voice firm, "we face it together." She inclined her head, her eyes fierce and resolute. "Together," she agreed. The void of space stretched endlessly, cold and silent, but aboard the Endurance tension buzzed like electricity. Elias Cade stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the rail as he watched the stars streak by. They had jumped into a new sector, but the enemy was relentless. The two destroyers they had evaded before were still on their trail, reinforced now by another fleet that moved faster and struck harder. Beside him, the alien princess, no longer masked, leaned over a console, her sharp eyes scanning incoming signals. Her hands moved with practiced precision over alien controls, interfacing them with human systems. "They've adapted to your patterns," she said quietly. "Your evasive maneuvers are no longer enough. They anticipate now." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then we'll give them something they can't anticipate." Nadia, standing behind them, frowned. "You mean more crazy maneuvers?" Elias smirked faintly. "Exactly. But this time we add a little human unpredictability combined with her insight. It could work." The princess glanced at him, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. Perhaps humans are more resourceful than I believed. But it will be dangerous. One mistake and we all die. Elias met her gaze, determination blazing. I've never done it any other way. The enemy fleet appeared on long-range sensors, a jagged line of destroyers cutting across the blackness. Their weapons glinted, deadly and precise. The crew readied themselves, tension thick in the air. Every man and woman on the Endurance knew the stakes. If they failed, not only would they die, but the princess and the knowledge she carried would fall into enemy hands. That knowledge could topple empires. Humanity could not let it happen. Divert power to shields and weapons, Elias ordered, and follow her instructions. Everyone stay sharp, the princess stepped forward. We will use a decoy. Draw them in close, then escape through the asteroid field. They will hesitate, and that hesitation is all we need. The crew exchanged nervous glances. This plan relied on precision, trust, and courage, all human traits they had relied on before. They nodded and moved to their stations. The fleet advanced, sensors glowing, weapons primed. Elias watched the scope, heart pounding. He gave the order. Activate decoy. A bright holographic projection shot forward, mimicking the appearance and signature of the Endurance. The enemy destroyed ships flared to life, moving in pursuit of the decoy, leaving the real ship momentarily unseen. It's working, Nadia shouted. Not for long, the princess said calmly. They will realize it eventually. We must move fast, Elias nodded. Engage the asteroid field jump. The ship lurched as engines roared, accelerating toward a dense field of rocky debris. Sensors blinked warnings, asteroids blocked their path, some large enough to crush the ship if misjudged. Hold steady, the princess commanded, and trust the unpredictability of humans. Elias gritted his teeth, navigating the treacherous terrain. They twisted and turned, dodging massive rocks, shields flaring as they brushed past smaller debris. The enemy fleet followed, slower, more cautious and far too rigid to match the human instinct for sudden, impossible movements. One destroyer struck a large asteroid, hull shuddering violently. Sparks flew from its engines as it veered off course. The human crew cheered silently, adrenaline pumping. This is just the beginning, the princess warned. The fleet ahead is larger, and they will not hesitate to destroy the field to reach us. As they pushed deeper into the asteroid field, the tension grew. Communication with the decoy showed the enemy growing suspicious. Elias knew their window of opportunity was closing. They are adapting, he said, voice low. They're learning. Then we must force them to react to something unexpected, the princess said. I can hack their targeting arrays briefly, but it will only last moments. Use that time. Elias's mind raced. Everyone brace for manual evasive maneuvers. When she gives the signal, we go left, then hard right, straight through that gap. The princess's fingers flew over the console. Now, she commanded. Shields flared as the enemy fire misfired, confused by the sudden interference in their targeting systems. Elias pushed the ship into the narrow opening between two massive asteroids, twisting the controls with every ounce of strength. The crew gasped as the ship slipped through the gap, a hair's breadth from collision. Behind them, the enemy fleet struggled to follow, many crashing against the rocks. Elias's heart pounded. Hold course. Keep pushing. Once free of the field, the crew finally had a moment to breathe. But the battle was far from over. The princess turned to Elias. You humans are extraordinary. I see now why you survive where others fail. Elias allowed a faint smile. We improvise. We take risks. And sometimes we just refuse to die. Her eyes softened, a rare moment of humanity in her sharp, disciplined features. I trusted you, Captain, and you proved worthy. But there was no time for celebration. The main fleet loomed ahead, larger and more organized than before. It was clear that this pursuit was not over. Elias glanced at his crew. Fear was still there, but determination burned brighter. This is it. Whatever comes next, we stand together, human and alien alike.
Are you ready?
The princess nodded. I am. But know this. What we do now may decide the fate of many worlds. Not just ours. Elias's hands tightened on the controls. Then let's make it count. The next engagement was brutal. The fleet attacked in waves, their weapons cutting through space like lightning. Elias used every trick he knew. Sudden drops in speed, unexpected loops, false jumps to throw them off. The princess fed him data from her empire's systems, predicting enemy movements and weak points. The crew fought like never before. Human courage shone in the face of impossible odds. They repaired systems under fire, manned weapons with precise coordination, and followed orders with unwavering loyalty. The alien princess struck from her place at the console, hacking enemy shields and disrupting communications. Together they turned the tide one fleet at a time. "You are extraordinary," she whispered to Elias over the comms. "Not for your strength, but for your courage, for your unwillingness to yield." Elias shook his head. "I've got a good teacher." She allowed a small smile behind her mask. "Perhaps, or perhaps humans are always like this. I see now why you survive, why you endure." Hours later, the last enemy ship retreated, its hull battered and systems failing. The Endurance floated in space, damaged but intact. The crew cheered, exhaustion and relief washing over them. Elias leaned back, watching the stars streak past. The princess approached, her face calm but weary. She studied the human crew, noting their courage, their resilience. "I underestimated you," she admitted. "You are more capable than I believed. More than weapons, more than strength, you are something else. Something remarkable." Elias looked at her. "That's humanity. We survive, we adapt, and sometimes we fight not because we want to, but because it is right." She studied him, her eyes intense. "Then I see now why I trusted you, and why I must continue to trust you. The battle is not over, but with you, perhaps there is hope." Elias allowed himself a moment of pride. Humanity had fought and humanity had won, not by power alone, but by courage, ingenuity, and unbreakable resolve. Yet even as they celebrated quietly, Elias knew the journey was far from finished. The enemy would return, stronger and more determined, and the knowledge the princess carried would continue to draw danger, no matter where they went. But for now, they had survived. And in that survival, Elias knew one thing clearly. Humans did not just endure the galaxy, they shaped it. And sometimes the most impossible odds could be overcome when humans refused to give up, refused to leave anyone behind, and fought with courage and heart. The alien princess looked at him, her expression unreadable yet hopeful. "Together," she said. Elias nodded. "Together." The stars streaked past the Endurance as it sailed through the cold emptiness of space. For the first time in days, the hum of the engine seemed almost peaceful. The crew had repaired the worst of the battle damage, and the immediate threat of the enemy fleet had vanished, though Elias knew it would not stay gone forever. He stood on the bridge, arms crossed, eyes scanning the infinite blackness ahead. Beside him, the alien princess, no mask now, her face fully revealed, watched quietly, calm but vigilant. They had survived impossible odds together, and now the question remained, what came next? "Captain," Nadia said, breaking the silence, "we've received a transmission from the nearest human alliance station. They've confirmed a safe landing point. They want to meet with us, and with her." Elias nodded. "Good, we need allies, and they need to know what we carry." The princess's eyes flickered with determination. "Then we deliver. The knowledge I hold, it can end the tyrant's reign, but it must reach the right hands." Elias looked at her. "And it will, together." There was a brief pause, the quiet hum of the engines filling the space. Then, as if reading his thoughts, she asked, "Elias, do you understand what my mask hid?" He considered her. "It hid your identity. But more than that, it hid your truth. Who you are, what you stand for. That's more important than your face," she nodded. "Then you understand why they hunted me, and why you and your people are now part of this fight." The journey to the Alliance station was tense. Even without the pursuing fleets immediately on their tail, the knowledge the princess carried was too valuable to risk interception. Elias organized the crew with precision, every human on the ship aware that their courage, cunning, and teamwork were as important as any weapon. As they approached the station, the princess stood beside Elias on the bridge. "These humans," she said quietly, "they surprise me. Their resilience, their spirit, they are remarkable." Elias smiled faintly. "Welcome to humanity. We don't back down." The station came into view, a massive structure orbiting a pale blue planet. Alliance ships were docked nearby, their sleek hulls gleaming. Communications officers hailed the Endurance, voices calm but urgent. "Captain Cade, we are ready to receive you. And your passenger," one voice said. Elias responded. "We are on approach. Prepare docking procedures." The princess watched the station with cautious eyes. I hope they are trustworthy, she murmured. Elias looked at her. You taught me that trust is earned, not given. Let's see if humanity can earn yours too. Docking completed, the crew and the princess disembarked. The station was bustling, filled with humans, diplomats, and military officers. The princess's presence caused a stir, whispers following her every step. Elias led her through the corridors, answering questions as he could without revealing too much. Finally, they reached the secure chamber where Alliance leaders awaited. The princess stepped forward, calm but commanding. She removed her final piece of armor and mask, standing as herself, a symbol of courage, defiance, and hope. The leaders stared in awe. You are the exiled princess? One of them asked. I am, she said, voice steady, and I bring knowledge that can end tyranny in my empire. But it must be used wisely. The wrong hands will only bring more suffering. One of the leaders, a stern woman with silver hair, leaned forward. You risked everything to reach us. Why trust humans? The princess glanced at Elias. Because they are different, brave, compassionate. They do not surrender to fear. They fight not for power, but for what is right. That is why I trust them. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humanity, despite all its flaws, had made a difference. Against impossible odds, they had survived and protected someone who could change the galaxy. The princess worked with the Alliance leaders, transmitting her knowledge, explaining the weaknesses of her empire's fleets, and offering strategic guidance. Human officers listened carefully, absorbing every detail, and quickly devised plans to use the information to end the empire's tyranny without mass destruction. Elias watched from the side, silently amazed. The princess moved with authority and confidence, but it was the collaboration with humans that fascinated him most. Where alien technology and rigidity had failed, human creativity, courage, and teamwork flourished. Hours passed. The Alliance strategists completed their calculations and the plan was ready. With this, one officer said, we can disable the fleet and give the rebellion a chance. Lives will be saved. The Empire will fall without unnecessary bloodshed. The princess nodded. Then it begins. Back on the Endurance, Elias and the crew prepared for departure. The station had given them supplies, repairs, and new weapons, but Elias knew their next mission would be even more dangerous. The Empire would not stand idly by as their princess escaped with critical knowledge. The princess approached him as he checked systems. Elias, I owe you everything. You saved me when I was helpless. You protected not only me, but your crew, your ship, and humanity's future. I will not forget this, Elias shook his head. You don't owe me anything. You would have done the same for me if the roles were reversed. That's what humans do. She studied him, eyes fierce but soft. Perhaps. I see now why humanity endures. Why you are feared and respected across the stars. You fight not for glory but for life itself, and that is a power beyond weapons. Elias allowed himself a small smile. Then let's make sure your empire sees that truth too. The rebellion began soon after. Human forces coordinated with the princess's allies, using the knowledge she provided to disable fleets, block reinforcements, and inspire uprisings across her empire. The empire's leaders were caught off guard, unprepared for humans' ingenuity combined with the princess's insider knowledge. Planets rose up. Fleet after fleet was neutralized with minimal casualties. Human pilots flew daring missions, often using clever tricks rather than sheer firepower. Engineers and strategists on the ground devised ways to disrupt supply lines and communications. The galaxy watched in awe as humans and their allies changed the balance of power, not through brute force, but through courage, creativity, and determination. The empire collapsed gradually, unable to adapt to the unexpected strategies of the human allied forces. The princess watched the progress, her expression calm but determined, knowing the sacrifices humans had made and the courage they had shown. Elias remained at her side throughout, coordinating, supporting, and ensuring the safety of both her and his crew. For him, it was more than strategy. It was about trust, loyalty, and seeing humanity shine against impossible odds. Finally, the Empire's tyrant was overthrown. The rebellion had succeeded. Planet after planet celebrated liberation. The princess stood before her people, her face unmasked, her eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. She turned to Elias. You showed me the strength of humans, not their weapons, but their hearts. Without your courage, your willingness to risk everything, I would not be here. Humanity will always have my respect. Elias nodded, humbled. And you have ours. You fought for what was right even when the odds were against you. That's what matters. For the first time, the galaxy witnessed a collaboration that transcended species, politics, and fear. Humans had not only survived, they had inspired hope, changed the course of history, and proven once again that courage, creativity, and compassion were humanity's greatest weapons. On the Endurance, the crew gathered to celebrate. Repairs were complete, supplies replenished, and the threat finally gone. Laughter and cheer filled the corridors. The princess joined them, sharing quiet smiles and words of gratitude. Elias stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. Humanity had endured, yes, but more than that, they had shaped the galaxy. And with allies like the princess, they would continue to do so. She approached him quietly. You see, Elias, you humans do more than survive. You endure, you protect, you inspire. You are extraordinary, Elias smiled. We try, and sometimes we get lucky and find someone worth saving. The princess looked at him, a soft expression on her face. Then I am honored to have been saved by humanity, and by you. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to the courage, loyalty, and resilience of humans. In that silence, Elias knew one thing clearly. Humanity's story was far from over, and wherever the galaxy needed courage, ingenuity, and heart, humans would always rise. Together they had changed the course of history, and together they would face whatever the universe threw next.